Bullies thrive on fear. It fuels them, emboldens them. They puff out their chests, sneer behind cruel grins, and convince themselves they're unstoppable. That is, until they run into someone who doesn't give them what they crave. Someone who isn't afraid. For 17-year-old Malik Turner, fear wasn't an option. Not because he was reckless, and certainly not because he wanted trouble. Trouble had a habit of finding him anyway. Malik had enough on his plate: school, training at his father's martial arts studio, working part-time jobs to help with the bills. The last thing on his mind was getting into fights with lowlifes on the street. But sometimes, no matter how hard you avoid it, trouble doesn't give you a choice. 1. The ride home. It was a warm, sticky evening in Fort Worth, Texas. The kind where the pavement still radiates heat after the sun goes down and the streets hum with a final rush of traffic before settling into a late-night quiet. Malik had just wrapped up a grueling 2-hour training session with his father at their modest martial arts studio. Sweat clung to his skin, drying slowly in the warm air as he pedaled his bike along his usual shortcut home. This route had always been familiar to him, an old, half-deserted strip mall parking lot that had clearly seen better days. The cracked asphalt was littered with weeds breaking through the seams. Overhead, flickering streetlights buzzed faintly. A few cars sat idly in front of a 24-hour gas station, their drivers probably inside grabbing snacks or cheap coffee. To Malik, it was just another quiet ride home. Until he heard them. The growl of motorcycle engines at first seemed distant, a background noise he barely registered. After all, Texas had its fair share of bikers. Most of them minded their business. But something about this was different. As the engines grew louder, Malik felt a tightening in his chest. Instinct, honed from years of discipline, told him this wasn't just a group passing through. He glanced over his shoulder. 3 motorcycles. Their riders fanned out across the lot like predators circling their prey. Malik's grip tightened on his handlebars. He wasn't someone who panicked easily, but he wasn't naive either. He coasted toward the sidewalk, hoping they'd pass. They didn't. Instead, they slowed their pace, maneuvering their bikes to block his way forward. The leader, broad-shouldered, wearing a grimy leather vest over a stained white tee, flashed a grin that didn't reach his eyes. His name, Malik knew from whispered warnings, was Bryce Bulldog Rollins. Malik had seen him hanging around the Rusty Nail, the dingy bar a few blocks over. He had a reputation for being trouble. "Evening, kid," Bulldog greeted, his voice rough as gravel. "You got a death wish, cutting us off like that." Malik frowned. Cut them off? He hadn't even noticed them until now. "I was just riding home," Malik replied, keeping his tone calm and steady. His father's rule was clear: never let them sense fear. One of the others, a wiry man with a patchy beard and hollow eyes, scoffed. "That's so? Sure looked like you were trying to get cute." Swerved right in front of us. Malik exhaled through his nose, steadying his breath. This was going nowhere fast. "Didn't mean to cause trouble," he said, inching his bike to the side. "I'll just get out of your way." But Bulldog wasn't done. He swung one boot down from his bike and planted it firmly in Malik's path. "You hear that, boys?" Bulldog chuckled, cracking his knuckles. "Kid thinks he can just go around." The third biker, a thick-set man with a chain hanging from his belt loop, leaned against his handlebars with an amused look. "I don't know, Bulldog. Maybe he needs a little lesson in respect." Malik's heartbeat settled into a steady rhythm. Not fear, not panic. Focus. His father's voice echoed in his mind. If you can walk away, walk away. If you can't, end it fast. 2. The first move. Bryce Bulldog. Rollins took a step closer, the soles of his boots scraping against the cracked pavement. The overhead lights stretched their shadows long and thin, giving the scene a twisted, almost surreal feel. "You seem smart," Bulldog said. "Smart enough to know when you've pissed off the wrong folks." Malik stood still, hands gripping the handlebars. "Didn't cut you off," he repeated calmly. "I was just riding." Bulldog let out a humorless laugh. "That's so." Wiry Beard stepped forward now, circling slightly to Malik's left. Thing is, we don't like punks thinking they can just do whatever they want. Malik's gaze flicked between them. They were setting up to box him in. Bulldog in front. Patchy Beard to the side. Chain Guy still lounging, but watching. You carry cash? Patchy Beard asked casually, like they were discussing the weather. There it was. This wasn't about an imagined slight. It was about power. Control. 3 men, old enough to know better, looking to shake down a teenager for pocket change. No, Malik said simply. Bulldog's grin faded. Now, that's a problem. He reached out, slow and deliberate, testing Malik's reaction. Malik knew this tactic, poking, pushing, waiting to see him crack. Bulldog's hand gripped Malik's handlebar. Malik didn't hesitate. With a sharp twist, Malik jerked the handlebars out of Bulldog's grasp, the motion quick but controlled. Just enough to make a point. Bulldog's grin disappeared completely. Patchy Beard let out a low chuckle. Although, we got ourselves a little tough guy. Chain Guy finally swung a leg over his bike and stood up, cracking his knuckles. Maybe we ought to see just how tough. Malik breathed evenly. 3 men. Big. Slow. Predictable. He could handle this. 3. No fear. For a moment, Bulldog seemed to reconsider. There was something in Malik's stance, feet grounded, shoulders relaxed, that gave him pause. But Patchy Beard had to open his mouth. You scared, Bulldog, he taunted. Kid ain't even sweating. That did it. Bulldog lunged a wide, telegraph move, going for Malik's shoulder. Malik pivoted, smooth and controlled. Bulldog's hand missed by inches. Malik's counter was immediate, a sharp palm strike between Bulldog's shoulder blades. Bulldog staggered forward off balance. He spun back, furious. You little. Patchy Beard was already stepping in, reaching for Malik's arm. Malik rolled his wrist free, then drove his elbow into Beard's ribs. The thud was deep, followed by Beard doubling over, gasping. Chain Guy cursed under his breath. Oh, hell no. But by now the swagger was gone. Malik didn't smirk, didn't gloat, just stood ready. Bulldog clenched his fists. You think you're some kind of ninja? Malik said nothing. The fight wasn't over. Not yet. 4. Escalation. Chain Guy struck next, faster than the others, a looping hook aimed for Malik's jaw. Malik ducked, the punch sailing wide. He stepped in, planted his foot, and drove his knee into Chain Guy's stomach. Air rushed from the man's lungs. He stumbled back, choking. Patchy Beard lunged again, desperate, swinging wild. Malik redirected his momentum, twisted his wrist, and flipped him hard onto the asphalt. Beard hit the ground with a grunt, rolling over groaning. That left Bulldog. Malik faced him calm, steady. We done here. Bulldog's chest heaved. His bravado was cracking. But leaders didn't just walk away without saving face. Bulldog's hand moved to his back pocket. Malik spotted it instantly. Not a phone, not a wallet, a knife. 5. Control. Bulldog flicked it open, the blade glinting cold under the streetlight. You think you're tough? He sneered. Let's see how tough. Malik didn't flinch. Fights weren't about looking cool. They were about survival. Bulldog lunged, knife forward. Malik moved first, stepping in, not back. His hand clamped Bulldog's wrist, twisted, and forced the blade to the ground. Before Bulldog could react, Malik drove his elbow into Bulldog's face. Controlled. Efficient. Bulldog stumbled, clutching his cheek. His eyes flicked to the knife on the ground. Malik took 1 step toward him. That was enough. Bulldog saw it. The fight was over. Not because Malik had landed the hardest hits, but because he wasn't afraid. And that Bulldog couldn't handle. 6. The aftermath. Bulldog stepped back. Then another. Behind him, Chain Guy was hunched over, still wheezing. Patchy Beard groaned on the ground. For the first time, Malik saw something new in Bulldog's expression, doubt. This ain't over, Bulldog spat. Malik didn't move. Go home. Bulldog glared, humiliated. But there was nothing he could do. Muttering curses, he limped back to his bike. The others followed. The motorcycles roared as they sped off into the night. Malik stood still, waiting. Only when they disappeared did he let himself breathe deeply. Kid, you all right? A voice called. Malik turned. Across the lot, a middle-aged man in a flannel shirt leaned against a pickup. He looked like he'd seen a lot in life. Hard to rattle. "I'm good," Malik replied. "I called the cops when I saw him surround you," the man said. Malik nodded. That explained why they left in a hurry. 7. Consequences. Sirens wailed in the distance. Malik stayed put. Running would make things worse. The cruisers rolled in. Officers stepped out. One older, Sergeant Daniels. The other younger, Officer Reed. Daniels picked up the knife with gloved hands. "Brent Rollins," he muttered. "You handled yourself," Reed said, eyeing Malik. Malik nodded. "They came at me." Daniels sighed. "You got parents we can call?" Malik hesitated. His dad, Noah Turner, was ex-Army. Strict. A disciplinarian. But lying wouldn't help. "Yeah," Malik said. "My dad's at home." 8. Preparing for what comes next. Noah Turner was waiting on the porch when a cruiser pulled up. Buzz cut. Military posture. Quiet strength. Sergeant Daniels explained. Malik watched his dad's jaw tighten. Noah said nothing, just took it in. "They'll come back," Noah said later, inside their small kitchen. "Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe not next week. But men like that, they don't forget." Malik nodded. "I'll stay ready." Noah studied him, then nodded. "Good." A long silence. Then Noah added, "Proud of you." Malik blinked. That wasn't something he heard often. "You kept control," Noah said. "That's the difference between a hothead and a warrior." 9. Discipline over fear. Malik knew Bulldog would be back, but he also knew he'd be ready. Because real strength isn't about knowing how to fight. It's about knowing when. Bullies thrive on fear. But when you take that fear away, they lose their power. You don't need to be the biggest. You don't need to be the loudest. You need to be in control. That's what real strength looks like.